Looking back on 2020, we can't help but measure our memories in terms of what life was like before the pandemic and what life was like after. The year started, as any new year does, with promise and with hope. 2020 ushered in a brand new decade. Even the New England winter had been mild as we moved into January. The Osterville Village Library, its staff and patrons returned from the holidays with a number of events to welcome the new year. Chocolate Fest was in the planning stages for February. Art exhibits were planned, and tax season would soon begin. All in all, a predictable but pleasant and productive time. It was early February before we all took note in the news of a virus rumored to be circulating half a world away. Far from our shores, the stories commanded casual attention at best, at least at first. Cases, however, grew, followed by word the virus, it now had a name, coronavirus, had shown up in and was rapidly sweeping across Europe. People were dying. A lot of people. Coronavirus was now front-page news, and medical experts began sounding the alarm that it would soon arrive in the United States. As we are all too well aware, the virus did arrive in the U.S., and it began taking lives here. By the time we reached March, talk began of mandated shutdowns in the hopes of preventing further spread. On one Saturday afternoon in March, the library staff went home for the day, unaware that they would not be back at the library the following Monday. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts had indeed ordered a shutdown. The village of Osterville was a ghost town. Workday traffic in the village was non-existent. It was eerie, and it was unsettling. The library doors closed until further notice. It was a first for the Osterville Village Library. An interesting thing happened, however, as the library closed its doors. The executive director and staff immediately started a plan to reopen. What would it take to ensure public safety? What sorts of safeguards could be put into place? Which resources could the library offer to the community before doors reopened? Join us as we follow the calendar through the past year. We'd like to share how the Osterville Village Library staff came together in the spirit of cooperation to help, aid, and assist not only the village of Osterville, but surrounding towns. The first effort undertaken to ensure the library could continue to serve the community during the shutdown was our one-way book giveaway. Whereas a system had not yet been put into place to provide for patrons to safely borrow and return books, the library came up with the idea to offer books from the library's gently used bookstore to the community cost-free. Carts were set up outside the library's front doors on Weano Avenue. Patrons could peruse the books on offer, take those which might be of interest to them or their children, and not worry about returning the item. Just as the name suggests, a one-way book giveaway. Over 3,000 books found homes. Children's books were especially popular, and it was a good feeling to shine a ray of light into the gray skies of an uncertain time. The library had mobilized to ensure that the simple pastime of reading a book did not also fall prey to the pandemic. As the pandemic continued and March turned to April, the impact the virus was having on our healthcare system fast became apparent. Hospital staff were overburdened. ICU beds were in short supply, and blood donations had all but ceased. Facing a deficit of opportunity to find locations to host blood drives, the Red Cross was severely limited in its ability to provide this essential resource. With proper approval and stringent safeguards in place, the Osterville Village Library offered its space for the Red Cross to host a community blood drive. The first blood drive soon became a series of blood drives, which continue to this day. By the end of 2020, over 600 pints had been donated. Other library resources besides space were also pressed into action for a good cause. The library's 2 sewing machines and 3D printer were offered to community partners to produce masks for healthcare workers. In addition, library copiers, scanners, and fax machines were made available by appointment for anyone needing a printout of crucial documents, including wills, deeds, and titles. Tax day soon approached, and the effects of the pandemic were so severe that even the IRS saw fit to adopt a new schedule. Tax day was extended beyond the customary April 15th, but the question remained, how would people be able to complete their returns? In past years, the Osterville Village Library had partnered with AARP to provide free tax prep to seniors. Thanks to some quick thinking and sound strategy, the library and AARP came up with a plan by which members of the community could drop off their taxes at the library to be prepared and return at a later date to pick them up. Over 150 seniors were able to have their taxes completed and filed. Just as the library was shut down, so too were schools. The Osterville Village Library offered access to its educational and instructional databases to accommodate the needs thrust upon students due to remote learning. As a supplement to reduced instruction, the library's Udemy database of over 4,000 free online classes fast became a valuable resource. Additional databases provided by the library catering specifically to elementary, middle, and high school students were also made available to the public for remote access. Whether a student in need of a tutorial on geometry homework or an adult looking to upskill in the pandemic job market, the library's database resources continue today to be an asset to anyone who wants to learn. A weekly newsletter also took shape during the shutdown. Written by library staff and issued via email, it kept the community up to date on the latest news, providing telephone numbers and website addresses to access accurate information about the pandemic. The newsletter also provided a thread of togetherness for the community. The idea was to reassure members of the community, including those who might be alone, that someone was at least minding the store and keeping their health and welfare in mind. In fact, the Osterville Village Library staff went one step further, taking it upon themselves to reach out to patrons who they knew to be alone, placing a telephone call just to say, "Hi, how are you?" or "Is there anything you need?" We enjoyed hearing the voices of patrons who we had grown accustomed to seeing day in and day out. We were glad to hear they were doing well. With all that and more going on during the pandemic shutdown, actual construction was taking place inside the library. As staff members answered telephone queries on how to access informational resources, they also undertook the heavy lifting required to reconfigure interior space to accommodate social distancing guidelines. Bookshelves were moved to create adequate separation. Plexiglass barriers were erected to protect both patrons and staff in advance of the day the library would reopen. Cleaning stations and instructional signage was provided so that when the go-ahead was given, we could welcome back patrons without missing a beat. The efforts as described to prepare for reopening went off without a hitch. We even chronicled our efforts via a narrated video so patrons would know what to expect upon their return. April turned to May, and everyone everywhere eagerly awaited word on when the mandated shutdown would be lifted. COVID case numbers began to decline. However, there was much that was not yet known about the virus. Once it was clear, however, that materials held in quarantine would be safe to reissue, the library began offering curbside pickup, where patrons could phone in their requests for reading material, and it would be placed outside the building for them to retrieve. Upon return, books or DVDs would be quarantined and sanitized in the name of safety. Hundreds of requests came in. Building on the success of our one-way book giveaway, curbside delivery helped to further restore a sense of normalcy to the community. People could again borrow books. The world outside, meanwhile, was in full bloom. The sight of spring brought relief to what had been a long, cold, lonely winter. Signs of life began to appear in the village, people out walking their dogs, and stopping by the library's front door to perhaps pick up a stick. A stick library for our four-footed friends is the least we could do. At last the day arrived. The Osterville Village Library reopened its doors in accordance with state guidelines on safety. It was one of the only libraries on Cape Cod to do so and would remain one of the few libraries to continue to provide public access for the balance of the year. People were eager to resume their reading. The Osterville Village Library received double, even triple, its usual amount of books to process. With our printers operative and computer workstations safely spaced 6 feet apart, we welcomed a number of new patrons, all of whom were more than appreciative that the library had gone to lengths to accommodate their needs. In addition to students accessing computers for remote learning, the library was able to accommodate adults who were now working remotely. Library computers, copiers, scanners, and Wi-Fi allowed people to communicate with their home office, whether it be in Boston, New York, or even overseas. With doors open and patrons back in the library, the staff worked not only in the professional capacity for which they were hired, but accepted their newfound part-time role as sanitation team to ensure all surfaces inside the library were sanitized both during the day and at day's end. A careful eye was kept on occupancy limits, and special requests were accommodated for patrons with medical conditions, including, in special cases, home delivery. The library staff had developed a good sense of what could be accomplished to serve the community, when just a few short months before it was unclear whether or when the library would even be allowed to reopen. As such, innovation and exploration continued. Before the pandemic, the library had hosted speakers and authors and varied exhibits. The staff now worked to transit such programming to the virtual realm. Pre-recorded informative video interviews of local health experts began our online programming menu. We soon supplemented with ideas of things to do outside. Interviews provided suggestions on hiking trails, birdwatching, even kite flying. Children's storybooks found their way into narrated videos courtesy the library staff, and we even offered the same for adults with our First Chapter Fridays, a weekly pre-recorded first chapter of a current bestseller. Grab-and-go kits were popular with the kids over the summer. Brown bag creative craft kits put together by our children's librarian that could be taken outside or taken to the beach for hours of fun. Outside the library, summer was in full swing. Safely accommodated crowds could hear a children's story time surrounding our library lawn gazebo. Yoga classes and senior workout sessions were held on the library lawn, along with book group meetings, condo association meetings, and a host of other local civic groups. June was also graduation season, and for high school seniors and others who had to forego the rite of passage, we were able to create a cap-and-gown photo op for proud graduates and family members on our landscaped grounds. July brought the hot weather, the summer residents, and the most crucial days of the library's annual fundraising efforts. While COVID cases had begun to recede, fundraising had already taken a hit. Our annual Cape Cod 5K road race could not be run as it had been run in the past due to the close proximity of the crowd. Once again, the library was able to adapt, improvise, and overcome. The race was reconfigured to be run in virtual fashion. Pick up a runner's bib, run the race route on your own time, log your time, post your photos, and all proceeds still benefited the library. It was a huge success and sorely needed in a year that understandably had diminished donations. Plein Air is another summer fundraising event which we were proud to have first introduced in 2019. The outdoor art auction drew a big crowd under the tent on the library lawn in its first year, but how to hold the event and still adhere to safety guidelines on account of the pandemic? Virtual technology was again the answer, along with some creative reconfiguring of our outdoor space. By holding the art auction online and reducing the field of artists on display, we were able to bring back the event much to the delight of a village sorely in need of bright colors and smiling faces. If the days of summer were filled with color, at night there was music in the air. On Thursday nights at least. Our outdoor summer concert series continued through the month of July, offering a different performer each week. Summer 2020 at last came to an end, as all summers do, even those altered by a pandemic. The library's annual Range Rover raffle sold out, and the proud winner picked up her prize. The weather cooled and summer residents began to migrate back home, appreciative that their children had the wide-open space of the Cape Cod beaches to allow them to remember what it was like to play and have fun. And as native Cape Codders know, the months of September and October on the Cape have a special charm of their own. The night sky especially. At Osterville's Douse's Beach, residents ventured out under the stars to peer through the library's telescope, guided by the expertise of a local astronomer. Some children would return to school, and whereas some districts still maintained remote learning, the library's educational databases once again proved to be valuable. Plus, now that our doors were open, we were once again able to offer space to trusted community tutors who, adhering to social distancing guidelines, were once again able to assist students inside the library. As the first fall leaves began to turn, the Osterville Village Library had ideas ready to go for safe outdoor fun in the spirit of the season. Our pumpkin decorating contest yielded some fascinating submissions from both children and adults. A series of lawn games on the library green kept families outdoors in the crisp air, and in November, the library hosted a Veterans Day walk complete with a dedication at Osterville's Armstrong Kelly Park. Fall turned to winter, and the holidays would soon arrive. Everybody's Thanksgiving plans had been modified due to fears of a renewed pandemic surge. And Thanksgiving and Christmas did, as predicted, create a surge in cases. But with the precautions put in place and perfected by the Osterville Village Library, the library was able to keep its doors open, continuing to serve the community. As we bid farewell to the past year, we are optimistic for the future. The hope we all hold for vaccines and other medical breakthroughs to return life to normal is tangible. A sense of humor also returns as we bid good riddance to the inconveniences endured on account of COVID. And we also reflect upon and mourn the very many lives lost. We are proud of having stepped to the fore to serve the community to the best of our ability. Our inspiration and motivation resides entirely in our commitment to the patrons who have supported us through the years. The Osterville Village Library is a 138-year-old institution. We are fortunate to have both time and history on our side. The efforts we have outlined, which for the library defined 2020, were never a race for recognition. The steps taken by our staff to provide public access were always in accordance with public health guidelines. Our efforts were, by contrast, an expression of our love for community and a passion to serve the public. The pandemic brought out our best. There is no greater gift to receive than a silver lining to shine through difficult days. Except, perhaps, doing so for others. 600 pints of blood tell the story. 500 coats donated during the holidays tell the story. Over 200 toys for needy tots in an uncertain economy tell the story. Even 50 bags of pet food further helped families forego a needed expense and kept tails wagging all the while. The smiling face of a child tells the story. A conversation between old friends and the sound of laughter tells the story. And these are the stories that make all the difference. The Osterville Village Library is the heart of the community that never skipped a beat. The pandemic is not yet over, but as we begin to write the script for 2021 and the years to come, we stand confident on the solid foundation we've built. If there are additional challenges, we will meet them. The Osterville Village Library continues to open doors, open minds, and open lives.